questions here. And what I've done is I've kind of ordered them from probably the fastest answers to the longest answers. So that's what order they went in, not the order that they were given to me. And also, in order to, because I got so many, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set a timer for 20 minutes. And when it goes off, if I don't get to the last one, that's the way it is, I guess. You can ask me later if I didn't get to yours. There is another Sunday. There are many other Sundays. Also, before I start the timer, I'd also like to give this disclaimer. These are my answers to these questions. I've said it before and I will say it again. We are all trying to figure things out to the best of our abilities. Coming from where we've come from, having experiences in our lives that we have had that are strikingly different from everybody else's in this room. So, you may disagree with me on these. I approve. It's okay. It's all right. But these are the questions you ask me, and so you get to get my answers. All right? Here we go. First question. How did Judas die, and who bought the potter's field? Well, that one is right out of the scriptures from Matthew 27, verses 3 through 7. And here it is. Then when Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that he had been condemned, he felt remorse, and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. But they said, what is that to us? See to that yourself. And he threw the pieces of silver into the temple sanctuary and departed, and he went away and hanged himself. The chief priest took the pieces of silver and said, it is not lawful to put them into the temple treasury, since it is the price of blood. And they conferred together, and with the money bought the potter's field as a burial place for strangers. So Judas hanged himself, and the chief priests used the 30 pieces of silver they paid Judas to buy the field to bury aliens and strangers in the land. Second question, if plants came before the sun, how did they survive without sunlight? I'm not real sure where the idea of that came from, because neither account of creation in Genesis 1 or 2 has plants being there before the sun. So, where did the water of the flood come from, and where did it go when the flood waters receded? They were the waters of creation. So if you take the first account of creation, when God separated the waters into the dome of the sky and into the seas, those are the waters that were separated. And basically in the flood story, what we have is uncreation. And so those waters return together. And then where did they go again? They were separated again into sky and sea. So the story is about uncreation. I love these questions. Here's it's actually a statement, but there's a question there. When I was little, I asked the nuns why dinosaurs weren't in the Bible, Old Testament, if God wrote it. I was told not to question, just to accept, like that would work. Having grown up Catholic myself, I have this kind of experience with nuns. First confession, we were supposed to had a time that we were supposed to be in the confessional. And I'm like, okay, I get that I lied, and that I, argued with my brothers and fought with my brothers, and that I, disobeyed my parents and that kind of stuff, but I can't take this much time, and so the nun said, make something up. Not kidding. Anyway, so when you get a nun response like that, I had to laugh. I just had to. My response to that question is, who says dinosaurs aren't in the Bible? You do get terms like Leviathan and Behemoth, which throughout the ages people have tried to tie to things like, hippos and crocodiles and whales and things like that. But, we're in a different context, and we're trying to fit them into things we can, conceive of, and so that's where they are. Who says that Leviathan and Behemoth weren't? And the other part of me says, if they're not specifically in the Bible, it's not really that important, because there are a whole lot of animals that are not specifically listed in the scriptures. Now we're getting into a little heavier games here. So next question, why, if God is omnipotent, did he need to rest on the seventh day after making everything? And my response to that is this. The question assumes God needed to rest. Nowhere does it say that God needed to rest. It says, and God rested on the seventh day from all the work which he had done. Had nothing to do with omnipotence, had nothing to do with being worn out or tired or anything. In fact, in the Jewish tradition, that is actually the last act of creation, and it is the creation of the Sabbath day. So it has nothing to do with God's omnipotence. It is creation of Sabbath. Next question. If Jesus was truly human, and he had the fear and trepidation that all humans have, especially about death, why didn't he walk away at the first opportunity? And I have one word answer for that. Obedience. Plain and simple. Obedience. God said, Jesus did. As we should. We are all human. It's not easy when God says, and you're supposed to do sometimes. Doesn't mean you get to run away at first opportunity. Next question. Do people who commit suicide go to heaven? I think I've said it before. I know I did in the Bible study. I'll say it here. Judgment is not my job. Neither is it your job. There is one judge of the universe, and even Jesus says he's not it. It is God. It is for God to judge, not for us. And for me, this thinking, this idea about who's in and who's out is a major cause for the church's decline, because we seem really, really focused on it. About who's in and who's out, and who's right and who's wrong. And we don't seem to spend as much time on the things like, love and justice and mercy and compassion. If you want a hypothetical, let me ask, what if by killing him or herself, a person actually saved thousands of lives? Do you think God would condemn that person? If you really want to get technical, didn't God kill himself? Yeah, there's one. I see the smoke coming out now, right? Next question. What do Christians do in heaven? Eternity is a long time. First, no idea. No idea. In the Old Testament, there is no heaven. There is Sheol, which is the pit or the grave. And that's where, it's like the Greeks' idea of Hades. It's just where, every soul dies and those souls go to the place of the dead. That's where they go. And in the New Testament, well, it depends on who you read. Or who you're listening to. Jesus says, well, there's no family. There's no spouses. We're different. We are like the angels. And then Paul says, well, we get a new body and we go to this new place. And then John in Revelation says, well, it's just this place where there are no tears, there's no death, and it's here on earth. Because the kingdom of God, the New Jerusalem descends out of heaven and lands here on earth. So, hey, ta-da! So maybe my answer would be, according to things like that, it's whatever you do here on earth. Now, here's the fun part. Most people, when they think about heaven, think about earth. Think about your idea of heaven. Okay, just hold on to it for a moment. Just think about your idea of heaven. where you are, what you're doing, that kind of stuff. Now, I'm going to guess about 90% of your idea of heaven, okay? So, if it's outside, if it's some nature-oriented place, raise your hand. By a big water, by a forest, something like that. Okay? You don't have a job. Isn't that funny? Think about this. Heaven, our idea of heaven is a lot like earth with all the bad stuff removed, right? So there's no tears, there's no death, there's no sickness. Everybody's family is there, right? Okay, even Jesus said, no, they're not. Okay, so these are all our ideas. It's earth with all the bad stuff taken away, and yes, apparently work is bad stuff. Because I've met one person in my whole career as a pastor who has a job in the next life. So we don't know. But everyone has an idea. And eternity technically is not a long time. Eternity is non-time. There's no such thing as time in eternity. So if you want to wax philosophical with me about that one, I'll go with you all night. So we'll just stop there. Who or what created God? This is one of those things that proves that we have trouble thinking beyond what normal occurrences or in our own realm. So, the first answer, easy answer is, well, no one really, or I don't know, you can go ask when it's all over. But here's an idea. How many people have heard of Albert Einstein and the theory of relativity? How many people here know what the theory of relativity talks about? Okay, well, here. It's called relativity because mass and the passage of time are relative to how fast we are going, okay, to our velocity. So, and this has actually been proven to a certain extent on the space shuttle. They have a clock that's synchronized to a clock in Houston. And it's, the atomic clock, so if you're off, you might be off by a millisecond somewhere over a long period of time. And they send the shuttle up into space, and it does its, on its super long missions, they'll come back and they'll show that the clock on the shuttle and the clock in Houston are actually 15 minutes different from each other. That the one on the shuttle is 15 minutes earlier than the one in Houston. And what that shows is that as the faster you go, because the escape velocity to get out of Earth's gravitational pull, the escape velocity is 14,500 miles per hour. That's booking. That's going really fast. Okay? And you have to keep maintaining that as you go in orbit. So, what the theory of relativity says is the faster you go, two things happen. Mass expands. So next time anybody might accuse you of being fat, all you have to do is say, I'm not fat, I'm just moving too fast. Okay. So the faster you go, mass expands and time contracts. Until when you hit the speed of light and mass is infinite, and time is compressed into what's called the eternal now. So all of time is available at every moment to the person who is moving at the velocity of light. And with mass expanding to be infinite, it also kind of gives credence to the idea of God being everywhere, because God's mass would fill the universe. It's infinite. And because if God is a person who can perceive the universe and exist in a universe like that, then God is outside of time. God was not created, even if God were created. Even let's say hypothetically, God is a person who 5,000 years from now was born and was able to finally break the speed of light and became the person who stood outside. To us, it makes no difference. God is still God, and all the actions of God are still the actions of God, and the Word of God is still the Word of God. But it's how one perceives. So all of time being available to God means that God can also step into time whenever God wants. So who created God? I don't know, but maybe it's not a question of who created God, but how does God perceive things as differently from how we perceive things? Where does God exist compared to where we exist? And that's what you get. I don't care if it satisfies you. Next question. Let me do it at a time. Oh, wow. In order to be the Christ, the embodiment of God and the Messiah, Jesus had to be the blood descendant of King David on his father's side. Jesus is not the blood son of Joseph. How was he the Christ? This question is actually false on 2 counts. First, any anointed person is a Christ or a Messiah. Okay, so any priest or king was anointed, and therefore they were considered a Christ or a Messiah. A foreign person in the scriptures is actually called God's Messiah by God, and that is Cyrus from Persia, who came in as God's anointed, God's Messiah, to free the people from their exile in Babylon. So anyone who is an anointed person is a Christ. Second, family. The idea that Jesus had to be a blood relation of Joseph is a modern idea of relation. Family association then is not as we define it today. And the best example I can give you is if, like during the, when a person who is not a Jew joins the Jewish community, becomes a Jew. After they are immersed in the mikvah, the ritual bath, yes, they are submerged in water. If you think Christians came up with baptism, that's false. And they are submerged 3 times, and on the 3rd time they come up, and the first thing that they say is, "My father was a wandering Aramean." It's a reference to Abraham. Okay? They are now in the family of the Jewish people, but they are not blood relatives. So anyone who would adopt or take in another person, they would be considered that person's child. Also, it should be noted that there were two expected messiahs at the time, one from the line of David, which would be the kingly Messiah, who would purify Israel and rule as king forever, and the second was from the line of Joseph, if that doesn't ring any bells, like his dad's name. Comes from the line of Joseph. He was going to be a priestly Messiah who would be taken out and killed. How interesting that the writers of the Gospels made Jesus fit both of them. And how clever. Next one. Why are witchcraft, divination, astrology, and other occult practices forbidden as being false when there are plenty of stories of magic in the Bible, like Pharaoh's priest versus Moses, the witch of Endor, etc.? This is actually a common misconception. They are not considered false by the Bible. The Bible even says that they work. The Bible says, don't do it. And the Bible says, don't do it because they either seek to control God, or they are an effort of somebody to be reliant on somebody or something other than God. So if you're in the covenant group, you don't do these things because your dependency is wholly upon God and nothing else. And no one else. And so these things are forbidden because they are trying to do those other things. They're trying to control the environment, they're trying to control God, or they're trying to be reliant on something other than God. This one, I have 1 minute and 22 seconds left. And I have one more question that I've written down. So I actually timed it pretty good. But if you don't mind, I'm going to go a little over. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay. How can Christians say that their way to God is the only one? Especially since the God of Abraham spawned the 3 biggest religions claiming his God: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So first of all, I want to make clear that the Abrahamic faiths all believe that there's only one God, and it's the same one. Okay. What about Buddhism? The Dalai Lama is a continuously reincarnated spiritual leader who was found often as a child in remote areas with the knowledge of a past Dalai Lama he couldn't know. It's interesting, I just watched a show last night in which the Dalai Lama was talking about the fact that he could be the last because of the way things are going between China and Tibet. So if he's always reincarnated, is he always reincarnated, or is there a last? I don't know. And, okay, well, let's talk about other religions first. The wisest thing that I ever heard, actually, this is kind of funny because it comes at the other end of where I was joking about nuns. It actually came from a nun who was in the Holy Land. And this one guy who wrote about his experiences, he wanted to go worship at the temples of the 3 major religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And so he went and worshipped those places, and when he worshipped at, I think it was in Bethlehem, the church in Bethlehem, he ran into a nun. And he was asking her about, all these other religions and things like that, and her response was this: if the Trinity teaches us anything, it's that God reveals God's self in many different ways. Which I think is wise. Your experience of God is not my experience of God. How many people here, just as a boilerplate example, how many people here have been smacked on the back of the head by God? Literally smacked on the back of the head by God. Me. Your experience of God is not my experience of God. To take a culture that is thousands of miles away and to exclude them and say God could not have appeared to you like that because God doesn't appear to me like that is a bit egotistical. And again, part of me says it's this. Well, I'm going to get into the last half of this question before I get to the final part. Okay. So there was another question that was similar. How is it a moral framework for the one governing the universe to judge people based on whether they believe he exists instead of on their actions? How is it a moral framework to have a child rapist who is saved later go to heaven, but to have a Hindu school teacher who spends his life in service of others and never harming anyone go to hell for no other crime than a failure to believe in Jesus because he happened to be born in India? And my answer to that, and to the whole argument about, there's one way in, is this. Since roughly the 18th century, mid-18th century, we've had this thing called the Enlightenment and modernity. Okay? And it has taught us all to do one thing. Be either right or wrong, with no in between. And if you doubt me, remember your education, think about your children's education, and the way education is now. You are either right or you are wrong. And if you are right, you are good, and if you are wrong, you are bad. My favorite example of that was from MASH. Anybody see MASH? And Hawkeye has got the concussion, and he's trying to stay awake, and he's talking to the Korean family. He's talking about his first grade teacher who was always so helpful. And so whenever he got a problem wrong, she would slam the ruler on his desk and go, "You got it wrong!" This is what we grew up in. This is our culture right now. You don't think it's our culture. You're not really paying attention really to what's going on. Our culture is bent on right and wrong, good and bad. Nobody's really trying to find their way in this world, even though we all know we're groping for it in the dark. That's scriptural, by the way. But somehow, we're the ones who are right, and somebody else is the one who's wrong. That is not even paying attention to what God and Jesus told us to pay attention to. In fact, I have derived from the Old Testament that the whole point that God hasn't chosen people at all is because not everybody is supposed to be in that group. And it doesn't mean they're condemned to hell because they're not. It means that this group, who has agreed to God's terms, have said, we will do these things on behalf of all humanity. We will be good on behalf of all humanity. But we really want to make sure that we're right because we've staked our souls on it. And again, that comes back to one of the other questions about judgment, which isn't our job. It's funny because another one of the questions was like this. This may be irreverent, but John's book of Revelation sounds like he was tripping on shrooms or peyote or some other hallucinogenic. So why are people so fascinated with interpreting it? And another was, why are there so many hypocritical Christian churches and people who act as un-Christ-like as can be? And it comes down to this very same point. We love Revelation because we think if we understand Revelation, we know what to say and where to stand to dodge all the bullets at the end times. And if we know those things, then we're safe and everybody else is on their own. And why do churches act un-Christ-like and un-Christian? Because that's what they're worried about. They're worried about saving their own behinds and not being Christians in the world. Being Christ in the world. I'm a little passionate about that. If you couldn't tell. It's just one of those things. I understand the question. And these questions, by the way, some of these last questions came from people who are atheists. You can hear the frustration in the questions. The things that don't make sense. And why don't they make sense? Because we're focused on the wrong things. We really are. Jesus didn't tell us to go out and make sure, someone was in and someone was out. In fact, even the Great Commission, which shows up once in Scripture, in Matthew, was a later add-on, and it's been interpreted incorrectly. And literally, in the Greek, it says, go, that's a command, by the way, go, disciple to all nations. So you're the one discipling, doing the action. All nations are receiving the actions of the discipleship in the name of God. It's not go and make disciples of all nations. It's just not there. The word make in Greek, not there. It is not there. And yet, we think it means force, too. It's not about that. It's about love and service and justice and mercy and compassion. Not right and wrong. Let God determine who's in and who's out. That's God's job. I think that's enough for now, right?